I wanted to talk about the origins of this project because this is the second film that you've made based on a Skip Hollandsworth article on Text Monthly. The first one was the great, iconic to me, Bernie. Really wonderful movie. But Skip Hollandsworth, and I think your films based on his work are really good at picking up the odd, curious, true-to-life stories.
Well, that's Skip. I've been reading him for years, but he just has a nose for the weird, just bizarre, true crime, really fucked up kind of situation. I don't know. So the Bernie article was from like 1998. I read it and called up Skip and started talking to it because I felt, oh, that's like about my hometown. I knew everybody in it. I wanted to make a movie. But that movie didn't happen for more than 10 more years. But this article on Hitman was from like 2001. Right. So I talked to him at that time about it. But I mean, it was obviously all these years later. But I never got that character out of my head. I was like, I always thought there was a movie there. But it wasn't until during the pandemic, Glen called me up and was like, hey, I was reading this article about a hitman from Texas. I was like, Glen, I read that when it came out. I know Skip. I've talked about that for years, but it didn't have, there was a repetitive quality because it's like, well, they do and it happens in a lot of his articles. It's like, whatever the criminal, they kind of do the same thing over and over and then they get caught or they don't. But it didn't really have much of a narrative thrust or a third act, maybe not even a second act. It just kind of was the same thing over and over. So we started talking and just started taking these leaps. So the article pretty much ends when he lets her go. Right. So he does let go this young woman, but then we had this idea, well, what if she called him and just thanked him? What if she asked him to meet? What if it's like, wow, then he'd be trapped in his, it really became about identity and became kind of the, I don't know, film noir meets intertwines with screwball comedy that I was kind of going for here, kind of mixing those genres.
Yeah, because you move beyond the article, but you move in. I mean, one of the great things I think about your work is that the entertainment is on the surface, but there's a lot of, I can feel the thinking. I can feel like I'm thinking alongside the choices that are being made. And in this, I was surprised to read the article and find out he did have two cats. There was a woman that he felt a little bit of something for that he let go, but certainly you go way beyond that. But when you're conceiving of this with Glenn and with the other performers, what do you have in mind? Where are you trying to go? What's interesting to you about this guy?
Yeah, well, Gary himself, I got to know him. He was a really pretty fascinating guy. Very thoughtful. He was this Jungian scholar. He taught at the Houston Community College, and he had this kind of incredible life. But he was really, like I say in the final thing, chillest dude imaginable. Well, that's the guy I got to know a little bit over the phone. I never met him in person, but we talked a lot, and he was just whatever, man. Like, hey, I think the movie's gonna happen. He's like, sounds good. He didn't really, but it wasn't like, he was kind of like at this Zen place. He had a nice Buddhist funeral when he died. He died right as I was tech scouting, and I hadn't been able to get a hold of him. I was going to say, hey, Skip, hey, Gary, the movie's really happening and all that. And Skip, I got in touch with Skip because I hadn't heard from Gary, and Skip called his widow, his, Sonny, a woman he had been married to, but then they were really close, just his whole life. And she said he had passed away. He's a Vietnam vet, some kind of, pulmonary, that Agent Orange kind of thing, where it just, so I don't know. It was really sad, but pretty remarkable guy. And if you have a kind of a thoughtful character like that, who I thought was so interesting, it was easy to just go in that direction. It's not like we made up. I mean, sure, we made up plenty, but the thrust of it was kind of based on him, I think. We had to really imagine her. That was more of a leap. And I think I give Adria herself a lot of credit for that. She came in and whatever, when you're in a genre, you're kind of dealing with the cliches of the genre, the tropes, and it's easy for that to kind of find its way into the script. So it's good to have actors like, oh, I'd never do that, or just things you've seen before, or anything that kind of borders on cliche. So you got to just keep pushing yourself, and she was a great partner too, when she came aboard. So
I mean, the thing that I really always value about your films is that thing you do where I just love to watch your characters talk to each other. Even, I mean, maybe this is more pronounced in like the big ensemble films, but in this, I just, Retta cracking jokes, like Sanjay cracking jokes. How do you do the thing where you get, because it's something that I think other people try, but you're uniquely successful at giving us characters who make us curious, but we just like to watch them do their thing.
I don't know, you can't help but be yourself. I thought, oh, I'm making kind of a sexy thriller here. I was trying, and then I look up and they're all just kind of talking and, making jokes. I'm like, damn, I was really trying to keep it, I can't do it. So, I don't know.
This kind of is your, like, if you were to make Out of Sight, I feel like it would be kind of like lighthearted in the way that this movie is. I really like that.
Yeah, I can't take it too serious. Even though this is based on a true story, I just always thought this material was just so inherently darkly funny. Because it's like these, and I listened to all these tapes. I saw videotapes. Skip gave me boxes of his research. So I'm watching terrible looking videos from the late 90s of these people soliciting murder. It's just so banal and so bizarre. These sad, desperate people from all walks of life, just like the movie. Rich society ladies in nice hotel rooms, guys at dumpsters behind Denny's, just wow, they think they're choosing to end someone's life, but it's just so bizarre that they think that that's real, that it's like buying a used car or something. That's what the transactions felt like. It was just so, I was like, this is crazy. But it's that pop culture myth that these hitmen exist. I mean, they just don't.
And I think, like, for me, one of the great punchlines of the movie is the idea that these are all just sort of misguided breakups that people
quite a few
just need to work their stuff out.
There's
maybe?
a lot of you're like bumping
In
off business partners that they're sick of, and
right.
Usually there's an insurance twist in there, and they're trying to get money and knock. While you're going to kill someone, might as well cash in too. That's pretty pathetic. But
sure, right.
But yeah.
Can we talk about your?
I'm forever fascinated by that. I mean, sure, there's mob, gangs do have targeted killings and drug cartels and that, but the idea that you could just sit down with someone across the table that you just met, I mean, that's really silly, I mean, just think about it, how easy it would be to arrest them. Just flip this switch, like, oh, I'm looking to kill my business partner. Whoever shows up, throw out just hand them $50,000, they take it, arrest them. It would just be so easy. Anyway, this movie's not going to change anything, by the way. There'll be more Hitman movies and everything.
I mean, I love
and
Hitman
people
movies.
will keep soliciting murder.
I don't know what I would want if I hired a hitman, but I feel like, I mean, but I feel like
Glenn would figure it out, and
that's
he
what
would put a costume on.
That trope of him and Glenn and the costumes.
We had so much fun with that, by the way. Well, Glenn really went off the deep end with all that stuff. He and Tara, our hair makeup person, I was like, God, can we get away with that? It's like, oh, let's do it. Everything we did, we just did it to the max when it came to that kind of stuff.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
But also,
comedy.
I mean, for him, I really appreciated actually seeing him do every kind of weird thing. He's very good at. He's a great comic actor.
He did the work too. I mean, put a lot of time on these various accents and looks. And Glenn's reading books about, body language and how you walk and how I don't know. Just he really did a deep dive into these. To all that. It was really fascinating to see, his dedication and everything. It was great.
So he killed someone.
He killed a few people, just a couple.
just to see what it was. Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah, this movie was so weird. Some weeks we're shooting it and we're like, this is, we're in the classroom. We're like, the movie felt so different at different times. Like this is the Dead Poets, section. This is the 9.5 weeks section. This is the like we're in the house. It was just we hit a lot of different notes.
And that's reflected, I think, yeah, in the movie. I think something I was really attuned to as I was watching it for the first time. I've seen it a couple of times now because it's a very fun film. But I was really impressed with how far you went with the professor stuff and the scholar stuff. The id and the ego cats. It seemed like you were having some fun with also just like the Jungian professor aspect of this, but that's something genuine for the character. Really
Yeah,
came
no,
out of that.
I'm personally really, that's why I think it went in that direction, because that's something I do ask. I mean, it's the most ancient question, know thyself, you know. It's like, well, who are we? I've wondered that. I've read everything I get my hands on over the years. Can we change? Are we fixed? We have these set points? You know, these are kind of fun things to think about, but I had read a lot of material recently. It's funny how scholarship changes. Suddenly there's a wave of scholarship supporting something that you've not, you know, that's a different view that hasn't been around forever. So that's very fascinating, this idea that you could change. So I was sort of running with that, you know, that whole as if thing. You know, it's going to be careful who you pretend to be, because that's who you are, or could be, you know. So.
Yeah.
But I like to think it was just positive, you know. Yeah. I mean, the noir tropes are like they're always tragic. You know, the guy who couldn't help himself is either dead or in prison. She's either gets away or is dead too. You know, that's kind of the ending of most of those. But I was like, no, what if they're meant for each other? You know, like more of a screwball comedy thing. It was more positive, more funny. So everything kind of went through that positive, so that the self that could emerge would be a better self, not a worse self. You know, everything was kind of more had a slightly optimistic, positive spin on it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I've rooted harder for a kind of femme fatale archetype in a film. I really wanted it to
Isn't that
work.
powerful about cinema? She's on the hook for at least 1.5 murders, maybe 2. But you're pulling for it, yeah. She's
Right, I am.
It's like good, you know. We're invested. I love cinema
you know,
for that.
Slay,
you know, it's like,
whatever
yeah,
she.
Those guys were jerks. Those guys were jerks anyway.
Right.
They don't, you know.
Absolutely.
I like what it does to your brain. Our moralistic, you know, thinking is like, I'll hold that one back a little.
Absolutely.
You know, so. Or even his job, you know, is he entrapping people? You could argue most of these people soliciting murder are in a kind of a manic, desperate state and could really be much better off with like emergency mental health. But our society, we're pretty legal. We just kind of go for that. I don't know.
And they're hiring hitmen. You know.
Yeah, you got to do something, and thank God, right? You know.
Right. Well, we were getting the heads up about time because you have to make it to London to show this again. But thank you for joining us.
Oh, what's that?
Thank you for joining
Well,
us.
it's always great to be here.
Yeah.
Really fun to be. You know,
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
And we are going to give him a second to run out and catch his
I
flight.
got to pull out my cape and fly away.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, everyone.